So this happened to me today.
Oh no! Oh no! No, you didn't!
The chicken tastes as if it's been sitting alone in a bucket for a while.
Alright, what is up, Transformer fans? It's the video review of Transformers Prime, Voyager Class, Skyquake, and Dreadwing. Now, I had the Cyberverse versions of both of these figures, and I really liked the characters. I liked the design, I liked the way they were in the show. Overall, I really liked them. But, you know, the Voyagers never really... I don't think I looked into the Voyagers too much, but I'm actually quite surprised at how good these figures are, and, disclaimer, the Dreadwing that I have is broken, and he's been repaired by me. So fortunately, he is more functional than he was when I got him. However, he still has some problems, and he doesn't have his weapons. The Skyquake I got brand new. He came without his box, but he had been opened and put into the shipping box and sent straight to me. So my Skyquake is brand new. My Dreadwing is used and is broken and is missing some parts. So I figured I needed to review them together anyway, but it definitely helps that the Skyquake is in better condition than the Dreadwing is. So even though Dreadwing came out first, I'm going to be focusing on Skyquake because he is in better condition, and I don't want to review Dreadwing, the figure itself, because it's in poor condition. Not to say that this is a bad toy. I'm still going to talk about it, but I'm going to lead with Skyquake. So let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. I went ahead and said that I did not have the weapons for Dreadwing, and I don't. But Skyquake came with his little weapon thingy, and it actually is supposed to be underslung. It's his little Gatling gun that lights up. And then he came with the sword as well. But Skyquake, I don't believe Skyquake ever used a sword. So I usually give the sword to Dreadwing so he has something to hold. Dreadwing came with this instead of orange clear plastic and green regular plastic. It was yellow and the purple, and it was his cannon that he uses. But I find it fitting. Skyquake used his gun more, and Dreadwing used the sword more. He was more of a swordsman. So that's how I divvy up the weapons. So there's that. They do plug in. I hate these Power Riser gimmicks. I hate them with a passion, and one of these days I will make my own weapons for Skyquake and Dreadwing when I have my own high-quality 3D printer. But until that day, I'm stuck with this. Anyway, you're going to forgive me if I sneeze, because there's nothing you can do about it. Let's take a look at the jet modes themselves. I had a sneezing fit right before I started, that's why I said that. Isn't that good to be honest on camera? It's, you know, usually people are thematic and are like, oh no, I never get sick. No, I died a little bit before I started filming, so haha. Dreadwing is a dark purple. It's more blue than purple, but I guess it is a navy blue, but it has some purple in it. Jet with some silver detailing, some black detailing, and gold shiny detailing, which is very nice. The top of the jet is very cohesive, and I really like it. Underneath, it gets a little bit messy, but because of their design, I kind of understand. Plus, in the show, the jet had a lot of bulk anyway, so I'm kind of willing to forgive. The biggest eyesore is definitely his hands, and then the sides of his crotch that just kind of stick out here. Those two things are the biggest eyesore, and, you know, whatever. Yeah, but his hands hang out the back, and the crotch piece is just sticking out either side. But he does have retractable landing gear, if you ever wanted to mess with that. The rear wheels back here are just nubs. But yeah, he's a very nice, very sleek-looking jet from the top. You can see it's just very nicely detailed. Lots of joints, lots of panel lines, but that's because of the way these guys transform. I will say something I don't like about Dreadwing is the fact that his cockpit is just this solid blob of yellow. If you look on Skyquake here, they've done a little bit more detailing on Skyquake, and I feel like Skyquake overall is better painted, which is interesting because he came out in the last wave and he came out after Dreadwing. So it's kind of like the latter one was better. I don't know. I really like the gold on Skyquake. I think it gives the figure just a lot of pop. But I think in terms of overall how, which one's painted better, I think Skyquake is painted better. He's got the orange canopy and he's got all this silver detailing on the canopy, which really seals the deal in robot mode. He's got all the red striping and the silver Decepticon symbol. Red striping on his tail fins, just like Dreadwing, but he had gold. But yeah, I think Skyquake just looks like an overall better jet, and it's just because of the more attention to detail, I think. They're very similar with a few minor differences, but I think if you're gonna gauge which jet looks better, I think Skyquake looks better. So they don't do much in jet mode because they're jets, so they don't even really roll. So let's get to transformation. Transformation is actually really interesting on this figure. Now the bottom half of the toy is pretty much what you'd expect in terms of a Transformers Prime Robots in Disguise type transformation, but the whole upper body and all that from the waist up is something reminiscent of a movie figure. And I'm not necessarily saying Revenge of the Fallen when the movie figures were the most complex, but it feels like a movie figure, and you'll see what I'm talking about, and I'll kind of point it out as I go along. But we'll go ahead and start. And this is one of the biggest parts of it feeling like a movie figure. Is you have to loosen a lot of stuff, and it kind of explodes outward and then comes back together. So what you want to do first is you want to loosen the back here, where these tail fins tab into the thruster assembly. You want to untab the back of the wings and flip them up. Loosen all this. Make sure all this is just pulled apart. Then you want to what you want to do, now that all that back half is done, we can go ahead and get his legs down out of the way. And they tab in two different places. The legs themselves tab in underneath here, and then the waist assembly tabs in underneath here. So you want to wiggle the legs off their post. Then you want to grab the whole waist section and wiggle it off their post. And so now this whole middle part now is free. So you pull that whole bottom half of the jet down and off. Then you take these halves and fold it together, making his waist. Straighten out the legs. Then his feet just kind of fold out like that. And then these tail fins kind of go wherever. Some pictures have them pointed up. I prefer to leave them down like this because from the side they look like part of his foot. But from the front, if he's standing, they sit flush with the ground, so they're less like kibbly, just parts hanging off the side. That's just how I do it. Some people may do it different, but whatever. Okay, so there's his lower legs done, and as you can see, that's pretty basic. That feels a lot like a Prime figure. So now we're going to move into this whole upper body, and this is where it gets insane. You want to kind of simultaneously loosen this whole upper section. So these pieces untab, these pieces untab and move out of the way. What you're doing here is you're exploding this whole cockpit area, and all this tabs in around this center mass here. And so now that you've untabbed all that and all that's exploded out, you can lift this up, and his head is actually stored right there. And so you lift it up, and then it comes out on another joint, and so you just leave it out like that. There's his head. Yay. Then what you want to do is you want to bring, these wings are on this weird joint that bring them out to the side and also down, and it also angles them. So it does three different things. It pushes them out to the side, it lowers them towards the back of the jet, and it angles them out like so. So you can see that. Now that that's happened, you want to take the thruster part and you want to hinge it up and onto his, what's going to be his back. And you got to be careful because this whole thruster piece is cast in a kind of a rubbery, you can see on the tail fins that they're rubbery, but all this is rubbery, and this figure is notorious if you don't treat it right. This whole thing rips itself apart, and that's pretty common on people who've played with these heavily. So then the arms are tabbed together, so you just kind of pull them out on these hinges, and so they're all tabbed together. Now you can start looking at getting his proportions in place. The arms are now out, way out to the side. So then you take this whole lower piece, and this slides back and clicks down like so. And I'm going to have to pan up. Okay. So now all this is lined up. The legs were down like this, and now all this is lining up. So you can see the whole like skeleton of the jet has to reconfigure itself while everything explodes up top and then comes back together. And you can really see what I'm talking about with the whole exploding thing. So then you can kind of just get the arms out of the way and start straightening them up, and you can see now how all this is going to go down. So there's that. And then you take this jet, the cockpit. What you want to do is there's a couple things that have to happen here. You need to split this lower landing gear section. It splits into two. You can fold the landing gear away. And you move these out to the side while pushing this silver piece forward. So this is on a sliding system, a rail. So this silver piece slides out from underneath this green piece here. So that flares out to the side and makes his chest. So that it was down like this, and so the whole cockpit like flares out, and then these pieces slide down to make his chest, right? So you fold the landing gear away. Now, because of his stupid powerizer gimmick, there's this shaft of orange translucent plastic that now has to be threaded through this hole, while also making sure the cockpit doesn't get stuck anywhere. So what you're going to do is you're going to fold all this up, make sure everything's sitting pretty flush, make sure his head's out of the way. Take this, now that you've pulled this orange part down, you're going to thread it through there. You're going to have to wiggle it a little bit. Thread it through there. Now all that's like that, you can tab the cockpit onto the waist, and here you can fiddle with the torso a little bit. These panels are just kind of draping down. These silver pieces are just kind of draping down in front of this cavity. So they're just, I mean, they're kind of wiggly to the touch. They just, like I said, are draping down, covering up that hole, which actually is a really nice illusion. Then you take these, the side panels that were on the side of his jet, and you rotate them like so. Kind of bring the arms up. Then these panels kind of fold down and look like shoulder bells. Then last but not least, once you straighten them all up, you can take this head assembly and it rotates forward and then tabs on. Well, yeah. It just kind of slots in there and holds all that upper stuff together visually. And now that you've done that, you have Skyquake and Dreadwing, because they transform the same, in robot mode. So here we are in robot mode. You can see all those paint apps I was talking about being awesome in jet mode on Skyquake really helps seal the deal on his cockpit. It just makes him look better, I think, instead of just having this blob of yellow that Dreadwing does. But both of them are very comparable in robot mode. I think the only thing that Skyquake does in robot mode that's different from Dreadwing is the fact that his eyebrows are painted a little bit more. You can see he's got the orange and the silver, and Dreadwing himself doesn't, which is not cool because Dreadwing had some gold up there, I believe. But yeah, they're very similar, obviously, because they're the same toy, but in terms of paint apps and deco, they're very similar as well, which is really convenient considering that they're twins. So I like that transformation, and I like the ending resulting, robot mode. But the problem is, like I mentioned, there's a lot of points in that transformation that can make or break the figure. The back jet thing falling off would suck. From the front you can't see, but because of Dreadwing and Skyquake's silhouette, they have the four wing thingies hanging off their back, and it just is one of those things. It's like, come on now, this Dreadwing fell off a table and his cockpit got cracked, and there's a screw assembly in here. Oh, sorry, Skyquake. There's a screw assembly in here that holds the two halves of the cockpit together, and that shattered as well. So what I had to do is I had to go in and repair that that screw assembly on one half and let that cure. I used some super glue and put there's a peg that sticks out on the inside that's threaded. So I had to re-put that on there, and then I had to make sure that the two halves came together, and he still doesn't tab together fully. Like, he sticks together way better than he did. But if you look under here, you can see there's a crack right there where there's not on this side. He just doesn't tab together as good as he could. So little things like that and little finicky things can really make or break a figure in the long run, and I feel like having one good one and one kind of broken one, I can report on those little nitpicky things that just are kind of like, come on, you know, as time goes on, do these figures last? And I think that this figure is good, and it's finicky, and most of its problems come from the fact that it uses rubber. Like, that whole back panel issue wouldn't be a problem if it didn't use soft rubber. Actually the whole head is kind of a squishy rubber, and I think I understand why, because there's such complex contours to his face. I think that it would have been really hard to cast that and make it safe, because he's so sharp. He's got such an angle to his face. It's kind of like, oh, if that was hard plastic, a kid could really hurt itself. So, you know, it's like you got to deal with these little nitpicky things because these are designed for children. And even though the show, you know, was a little bit geared more towards the young adult demographic, you're going to have kids buying these toys, and they have to adhere to certain safety standards. So I think that these figures, while their execution is good, there are some things about them that make them just a little bit, like, finicky. And I know that Skyquake was actually pretty rare because he's a last wave guy, so I don't know in the long run how these figures are going to hold up. These two could be really rare one day because maybe they'll fall apart, you know? So it's something to know before you get into these figures and you play with them. They're really fun. They're a lot of fun. The transformation is great and satisfying. The robot mode and the jet mode both look really darn good. Obviously, you got to make some exceptions because it's a jet transformer. I mean, hello, it's not worse than Silverbolt from Combiner Wars, where the whole robot is just stuck on the underside of that jet. It does a better job than that. These guys are really, really good figures, really great representations of characters in the show, and they're a lot of fun. But I just feel the need to say that, you know, there's a potential that they can break, and they tend to break more than other figures, and I just feel like I need to clarify that. So, I mean, I like them. I think they both look really good, and robot mode is awesome, and you know how that goes. So, the weapon is dog feces. It does not, he won't hold it underhanded, which is how he's supposed to hold it, so there's no point in doing it. But Dreadwing will hold his sword, so that's there you go. Yeah, Dreadwing has a sword. So now I've shared my piece about what I think about him, so let's actually just talk about Poseability, and then we'll hang up from this not Skype call. Head is actually super articulated on a really awesome ball joint, and like I said, it's kind of this rubbery material, so it'll hold a position a little bit better than something that would have been plastic, I'd suppose, because it'll stick like that. So there you go. The shoulder bell does move around, but the arm itself is on that weird little joint, which do with that what you will. But the ball joint is got a cutout to the side, and then he's got a rotation here at the upper, or the mid arm actually. He's got a rotation there at the elbow, and the wrist rotates. Moving on down, there's nothing at the waist. You saw how all that came together. There's absolutely no frickin' way they could have done a waist swivel. But the thighs have a ball joint with a cutout to the side, which is not even really a good ball joint. And it has a thigh rotation, a knee bend, and then you can kind of fiddle with the foot a little bit. And it's worth mentioning, I do believe that that's a Tamashii stand port, I think. if that's how you pronounce it. Whatever. That looks like something you could pose him with. Like you could stick him on a peg and he would pretend to fly. But, you know, they're really posable, and they look darn good, and they look like they leaped right out of the show. But I have to just warn you guys that they're known for breaking themselves. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. I'll talk to you guys later.